Good evening to you, my subscribers and followers. This is a deep dive. At the beginning of this election cycle, I decided I wanted to do a couple of exposés, brief exposés on the leaders in our country who have come and gone. And I decided to start with Michael Manley. And those of you who are following these videos would have seen that I've done Michael Manley, I've done Edward Siaga, and now it's on to Percival James Patterson. Now, these videos were intended to be, at best, a little bit of a spotlight on both. And some of uh, the people who have watched the videos have said that I've left out quite a bit. One of the things I couldn't do was to include everything, or these videos would run on for hours and hours and days and days and days. Most of these people have been in politics for a long time. A matter of fact, all of them have been in politics for a long time. We know how Jamaican politicians are like dinosaurs. So they stay and they leave, and they'll be in office, they'll lose, they come back, and they get elected again in some cases, and they serve again. And even when they even when they retire or so-called resign or step aside, they still inject themselves into politics, into the contemporary politics. And in some cases, you see them bringing them out in wheelchairs and stuff like that, as if the generation now cares about what they did. What they did is past, and most of it hasn't been good. So tonight we just want to talk about Percival James Patterson. Okay, Noel James Patterson, um, and we'll as I said, I can't do everything in a 10-minute program. I can't talk about all the things I'd like to talk about. And that being for JLP, PNP, I can't talk about the garrison politics. We all know that. I can't talk about the support for gunmen. We all know that. I can't talk about the men sent to Cuba to train as journalists and released on the country. We all know that. I can't talk about men killed at Green Bay, murdered at Green Bay. We all knew that. I can't get into all of the cop unalivers who were shuttled out of the country. We all knew that. We can't talk about the garrison of all garrison and the creation of a super don. We all know that. So there is so much that I can't talk about. So what I've tried to do is to give you a brief synopsis as best as I possibly can, as brief and precise as I possibly can, if not um, biased. I'm not going to claim that there's not bias in it. The fact, though, is that it will be truthful. So as we begin with Percival James Patterson, in the halls of Jamaican political history, few names are as synonymous with longevity as Percival James Patterson. But longevity is not the same as leadership. For 14 years from 1992 to 2006, Patterson presided over what many saw as a period of quiet stagnation, one in which the Jamaican people bore the weight of failed economic reforms, soaring crime, crumbling infrastructure, and a political culture that grew more cynical with each passing year. That's Percival James Patterson's. That's his legacy. This expose is not a celebration of tenure. It is a reckoning with the truth, because what really happened during the Patterson years need to be told. When PJ Patterson took office in 1992, he inherited an economy already teetering from the neoliberal structural adjustment policies embraced under Michael Manley in the 1980s. But instead of changing course, Patterson doubled down. Between 1992 and 2006, Jamaica's gross domestic product averaged a pitiful 1% growth per year, among the worst in Latin America and the Caribbean. The 1990s saw the collapse of the financial sector. Patterson's response? A massive government bailout via the Financial Sector Adjustment Company. And you all know that is what has been on the forefront on the lips of many Jamaicans as this election cycle heats up. It's called FinSac, and they don't want to take responsibility for it. That was PJ Patterson's baby. That was PJ Patterson and Omar Davies. That was their creation. Okay? FinSAC, the bailout cost over 100 billion. Did you hear me? Over 100 billion dollars Jamaican at the time, burdening Jamaican taxpayers for decades. Thousands of Jamaicans lost businesses, homes, and livelihoods due to FinSAC's aggressive foreclosures. By 2006, Jamaica public debt had ballooned to over 130% of GDP, one of the highest in the world. And you've heard me talk about it right here on this very program. Patterson's regime continually borrowed, often to pay interest on older debt. You've heard me talk about that. His administration was lauded by international lenders for being fiscally responsible. But on the ground, ordinary Jamaicans saw no real economic transformation. Unemployment hovered around 15% through much of the 1990s, disproportionately affecting youth and inner city communities. So much for loving the youth, so much for caring about the poor. Inequality remains stubbornly high. In 2006, the richest 10% of Jamaicans control over 40% of the national income. So while Patterson technocrats toured conferences touting stability, the Jamaican people saw stagnant wages, high inflation, and a rising cost of living. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, crime. When Patterson assumed power in 1992, Jamaica's murder rate was already high at approximately 30 per 100,000 people. But under his watch, that number more than doubled. Murder rate was already high at approximately 30 per 100,000 people. But under his watch, that number more than doubled. In 2005, Jamaica had the highest murder rate in the world, peaking at 64 per 100,000, a global disgrace. But not just a global disgrace, not just a global disgrace, by any stretch of the imagination. That's a pandemic of crime on Patterson's watch. What did Patterson do in response? He formed committees. He gave speeches. He launched the occasional crime plan. But there was no fundamental reform of the political garrison system, no serious investment in community policing, and no attempt to dismantle the parasitic relationship between politics and criminal dons. As for the police, PJ Patterson did not train a single detective in a whole decade during his tenure. So there was no solving of crime. They gave up on crime. Not a single detective was trained in a 10-year period. The Patterson administration continually rejected stronger security measures, stronger policies. He rejected every idea that could have brought a halt to the situation of crime in our country. Instead, Patterson favored a risk-based approach that often served as a smokescreen for non-intervention. I'm sorry, that should have been a rights-based approach. My apologies. So Patterson favored a rights-based approach. Portia Simpson favored a rights-based approach. The PNP favors a rights-based approach. And so does this Massa Mark, the British citizen who wants to become Prime Minister of our country. He also favors a rights-based approach. Crime is crime, and crime has to be dealt with. It is not a binary choice between respecting the rights of citizens or enforcing our laws in a strong and decisive way. It's not a binary choice. We can do both. We can walk and we can chew gum at the same time. Patterson along with all the other PNP, including Master Mark, chose not to do that. And that is why it is dangerous for Mark Golding to be allowed anywhere near Jamaica House. During Patterson's reign, gangs flourished, armed by transnational drug flows, often protected by political patronage, networks that neither party wanted to touch. The result? Entire communities becoming no-go zones. The police force was demoralized, and the justice system remained overwhelmed and underfunded. Patterson's legacy on crime is not one of peace, it is one of abdication. It would be bad enough if Patterson's tenure was simply incompetent, but it was also marred by allegations of corruption, cronyism, and opaque governance. The Shell waiver scandal saw the government accused of secretly giving tax exemptions worth millions to oil giant Shell. The Trafalgar scandal, although breaking publicly just after Patterson stepped down, implicated the PNP in receiving illegal foreign donations from a Dutch oil firm under a system and culture Patterson helped to normalize. Despite repeated warnings from the Auditor General and the anti-corruption agencies, Patterson resisted calls for stronger campaign finance laws and independent anti-corruption bodies. Transparency International repeatedly ranked Jamaica poorly on corruption perception indices throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. In 2005, Jamaica ranked 57 out of 158 countries with a score of 3.6. Yet the political class, including Percival Patterson, remain insulated and unaccountable. Their salaries rising even as the Jamaican dollar collapsed and public service deteriorated. The Patterson years also saw the degradation of, of physical infrastructure across the island. Roads fell into disrepair. Potholes became synonymous with Jamaica travel. Water and electricity supplies were unreliable, particularly in rural areas. Public transportation reforms like the JUTC were plagued by mismanagement, delays, and mounting operational losses. And I can tell you what those operational losses were. They were padded payrolls with PNP functionaries who did not do a day's work, and gang leaders, gang members on payrolls for work they never did. And then there's education. Patterson, former Minister of Education, promised to make education the cornerstone of national development. But while enrollment numbers rose, quality plummeted. By 2006, nearly 30% of students failed the grade 4 literacy test under PJ Patterson. Less than 50% of students passed 5 or more subjects in CXC, the bare minimum for upward mobility, all under Percival James Patterson. There were no major educational overhauls under Patterson, just stopgap programs, underpaid teachers, and decaying schools. By the time he stepped down in 2006, Percival James Patterson was the longest serving Prime Minister in Jamaica's history, but he left behind a tired party, a fractured society, and an economy in shambles. That's Patterson's legacy. His successor, Portia Simpson Miller, inherited a country where public trust in government had hit rock bottom. Voter turnout in 2002 elections under Patterson's leadership was barely 59%, a dramatic fall from the 78% in 1980. Patterson was more administrator than visionary, more survivor than reformer. He avoided conflict, sidestepped deep reform, and coasted on the image of being steady while the nation drifted into deeper and deeper crisis. So what is Patterson's legacy? What is Patterson's true legacy? It is a legacy of a missed opportunity, of a leader who avoided the hard decisions, allowed criminality to fester, debt to spiral, and hope to fade. Of a political machine that consolidated power while the people grew poorer, angrier, and more hopeless. 14 years, 14 budgets, 14 crime plans, 14 wasted chances. PJ Patterson may be remembered for his calm demeanor, his diplomatic tact, and his ability to avoid scandal, or so he thinks. But history should also remember what he didn't do. He didn't stop the violence. He didn't fix the economy. He didn't empower the people. And that, Jamaica, is the real tragedy. This has been the deep dive. For those of you who like our content and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. If you have already subscribed, my friends, please like our video, give us a like, please leave us a comment, and please share this content. We are happy to hear from you. Thank you very much, and good night.